coronavirus killing more people in the U.S. than the terror attacks of 9/11.
9/11 was nothing compared to this.
Could be a Pearl Harbor moment and a 9/11 moment.
And you see the statements made about the World Trade Center, all the death and destruction.
This silent killer, there was no explosion. It was a silent explosion with the same randomness, the same evil that we saw on 9/11.
What's the big idea?
It is a big idea.
My name is Chris Hampton. I'm 30 years old. I'm a filmmaker, an audio engineer, and an independent researcher. Over the last 15 years, I've seen countless documentaries, read hundreds of articles, and explored many theories about 9/11. But it was these two books that not only changed my outlook on the event, but changed my entire worldview and my perception of reality. 9/11 Finding the Truth by Andrew Johnson, and Where Did the Towers Go by Dr. Judy Wood. But there are more pieces to this puzzle. Sometimes in order to find the truth, we have to explore areas that make us feel uncomfortable. This film is going to do just that.
I believe we, particularly you, has an incredible window of opportunity to lead in shaping a new world order.
A new world order. Because we needed a new world order.
Novus Order Seclorum. A new order for the centuries, for the ages, forever.
It is a big idea.
What's the big idea?
Keeping alive the memories of the nearly 3,000 who died in the terrorist attacks of September 11th, 2001. This year, the remembrances are different. COVID-19 forcing crowd sizes to be limited, hand sanitizer and masks plentiful. Today marks 19 years.
We were told 19 hijackers stole 4 airplanes. Flight 11, Flight 175, Flight 93, and Flight 77. Flight 11 hit the Twin Towers at around the 93rd floor, and Flight 175 hit around the 77th floor. These strange coincidences become even more baffling when you realize these numbers were heavily embedded into occult philosophies and have influenced Western esotericism for over a century.
I'm here with William Ramsey, who wrote Prophet of Evil, Aleister Crowley, 9/11, and the New World Order. This is almost like a textbook that you wrote here, and like you said, the index in the back, you've got the Gnostic Anthem, the hymns to Pan, you've got so much, and you can just tell that you really read through a lot. You scanned Aleister Crowley's documents.
It kind of fuses together the concepts of really Aleister Crowley and the 9/11, which a lot of people would not put together. I didn't initially put it together, but there's numerical ideological connections between what people talk about the New World Order and Aleister Crowley in 9/11.
Absolutely, and that's a perfect opportunity to dive right into the cover page.
So you see these numbers, and I was kind of wondering, there's an over-predominance of this number 11 in that date, and the buildings and things like that.
September the 11th was 111 days until the end of the year. First plane that hit the World Trade Center, and it was Flight 11. The total number of crew on Flight 11 was 11. And the New York state was the 11th state of the US Constitution. And this period of no time was 1992 to 2012. And so 9/11 was 9 years from the start of no time, 11 years till the end of no time. Synchronistically, it was placed bang on where, it should have been. And on September the 11th, 1990, at 9:09 p.m., that's 11 years prior to 9/11, George Bush Sr. made his very first speech entitled Towards a New World Order, so this was 11 years prior. 60 years to 9/11. That was when the soil was broken for the Pentagon. And so you've got this date, September the 11th, again running through this kind of, you know, the nasty war machine of America, if you want to call it that. And there's a book written in 1981, and it was called The Birth of Christ Recalculated. Ernest L. Martin claims to have calculated the exact date of Jesus Christ's birthday based on celestial charts for that era. Essentially, Jesus Christ was born on September the 11th, 3 BC. The very first shuttle that got to the moon was Apollo 11.
You see this kind, they're telling you all this stuff. This is magic. I think that was all magic. I don't think we've ever been to the moon. The number one rocket to get to the moon was what? 11, right? So
11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, we celebrate Remembrance Day. The word crown was derived from Anglo-French word called couronne, which is derived from Latin for corona. The year that the word crown, you know, was first established was in the year 1111.
11 is a very important number in the Western esoteric or occult tradition, and it represents a lot of things, but it really specifically represents a lot of things to Aleister Crowley. How Crowley, I got led to Crowley, as I kept saying, is 93. And if you look at the picture of my book, you'll see the 11, flight 93, 93rd floor, 77. So all these numbers in Crowley's tradition, he really created his own religion called Lima, but it had a lot of numerology in that. And then 93, Crowley used something called gematria, which is actually kind of a construct within the Jewish Kabbalah.
If you have not seen the previous film, I strongly suggest that you do so, as you will need to know these 5 facts in order to retain the information here.
1. The towers turned to dust. It only took 8 to 12 seconds for each building to disappear. This requires an enormous release of energy. No paper burned that day, and there was no ionizing radiation. Therefore, jet fuel, heat, and explosives could not be the cause of this huge release of energy. 2. The destruction at the World Trade Center is identical to the experiments of John Hutchison and what is known as the Hutchison effect, which is outlined and compared to the evidence in Dr. Judy Wood's book, Where Did the Towers Go? Number 3. Bombs planted in the building and the evidence of nanothermite was fabricated by Stephen E. Jones, who was an insider at the Department of Energy in the 1980s when he falsified data to cover up the existence of free energy. 30 years later, he became a 9/11 truther. Number 4. The corporations hired by the government to investigate September 11th all specialized in directed energy weapons, psychological warfare, and advanced optical 3D illusion technology. Number 5. Even though the airplanes behaved impossibly and defied the current accepted laws of physics, nevertheless, the footage is real and authentic.
Those videos had not been tampered with. The videos were not fake, but something about the planes were fake because the impact dynamics was completely nonsensical. It did not follow the laws of physics. The 2 videos which show very well the impact on the side of the tower, they are just ridiculous. They do not show something impacting on the side of a tower. They show an illusion. But I think it's an illusion which is happening in real time in front of your eyes. The speed is the big giveaway to me. A 767 cannot travel anywhere near that fast at sea level. So we know it's not a 767 that's being used in this operation.
So what actually hit those buildings 20 years ago?
I'm convinced that covert technology was used in both the destruction of the towers and in what we were seeing with the alleged planes.
So were the planes a hologram?
I think it was some kind of image thing. And a lot of people have done, more research into that.
What was actually involved was some type of image projection technology. And I know that you've probably done more research in that area, because I know you've been talking to Mark.
I've found companies that specialize in holograms or holography, all members of the Directed Energy Professional Society, alongside Booz Allen Hamilton, Lockheed, Boeing. What about, SAIC or ARA? Yeah. They all work on PSYOPs.
They all work on psychological operations, directed energy, holograms, lasers, all things that you would see in a sci-fi film. It's actually being worked on, and these are the same people that investigated 9/11. They were paid, hired by NIST.
Yeah, well, just to mention, when you did the film, you covered a lot of the contractors who were involved in those type of technologies. You know, after the film, it was something that I got a bit more engrossed with. I wanted something tangible, how this is done. It's very secret, and you had people trying to debunk what was in the film, saying you can't project a hologram into thin air. That was one of my main missions, to just keep searching to try and prove this technology exists. So anyway, March this year, I actually came across a patent. I think it was published in 6th of February 2020, actually. I think it may have been applied for in 2018. That's around when your film...
Right.
Yeah. But the actual publishing of this document that I found was very, very... It ticked a lot of boxes for what we were talking about in the film. It is a system, a method for a laser-induced plasma infrared homing missile countermeasure. Essentially, what it is, it's a device that can be connected or attached to an aircraft. And if that aircraft is going to be seeked out by a missile, can project multiple aircrafts into space. And they are three-dimensional volumetric image of an object, which is like a ghost image. That's what they use in this document.
We had Grossman publish an article that's on my website called UA-175 Ghost Gun.
Yes.
And he talks about a military black ops project using the term ghost. And so I think it's very interesting this patent you found uses the same term.
Yeah, that's the term they use, yeah.
Do you have the document there with you?
I do, yeah. Yeah, this is what really struck me, because when you read the documents, some of the things they describe, it ticks every box of what we have spoken about for a long time. It is possible to generate a 2D or 3D volumetric image in space. It says in one potential embodiment, a laser system would be mounted on the back of an air vehicle such that the beam can be rastered using optics and mirrors to generate a large ghost image in space. This ghost image would appear to detract a homing missile away from a tangible air vehicle. In the second embodiment, there can be multiple laser systems mounted on the back of the air vehicle, with each laser system generating a ghost image such that there would appear to be multiple air vehicles. I have to say, Chris, this takes me back to Richard's very, very first radar analysis of Flight 175.
It became a project to compare all of those videos and ask the question, were they all showing a consistent plane path?
Sorry, second update, when he had the two tracks of two different flight paths.
I actually looked at two separate radar paths. One of them was from the military, known as the RADES system, which was positioned much further away than the domestic radar system. And I commented on the fact that there seemed to be a discrepancy. So the two radar paths were actually the same. They were going in the same direction, the same speed, but they were many, many meters apart, running in parallel.
They explained that away, that could have been to do with the razor calibrations and things different with the military and sort of civilian.
Apparently, if your radar equipment is a long distance away from the thing that you're observing, you get a fixed offset error. So this was just an error in the equipment. Once you take out that error, the two paths were the same.
But Richard originally thought that there was something travelling alongside projecting the plane.
All right, and I thought, well, was one of them being used to project an image that was producing the other one, perhaps? I wasn't sure.
Now, that, to me, becomes plausible again.
You're saying that this patent supports that first idea that one plane could be projecting stealth image, and as the document says that you just read, a three-dimensional volumetric object of a ghost aircraft.
Yes, which you know, depending on how we look at it, you did have that other aircraft that was travelling alongside. That's captured in a number of videos.
MES note, there were at least 3 mystery planes flying alongside the alleged Flight 175 plane, one located southeast of the W2C and 2 at the northwest at different elevations. Rare footage shows a mystery object flying near the second quote plane, which was going 587 miles per hour.
Why? Why he did that?
Well, in one of those clips, the wing disappears at some point, and that could be due to some sort of strobing effect.
The knotted footage shows the right wing missing and suddenly reappearing. There are also a dozen videos showing the right wing disappear at the exact same time and place, thus ruling out camera artifacts, video compression, and CGI.
But when we came down here, I see a rocket go into this one. Just watch the rocket drive straight into the centre.
Even photographs, not just screenshots from videos, show disappearing wings and impossible crash dynamics. This further rules out video artifacts.
When light doesn't do what you think it's supposed to do, you start wondering about what's happening with the optics.
Was it a projection? I don't go that far to say it was a holographic projection. I just say that what we were seeing was at least to some degree fake, and it was certainly not a standard 767 aircraft.
And you know as well as me that this particular, what we're talking about, it's removed. It's not even allowed to be spoken about. There's something very protective going on around this technology. There's some type of censorship around these airplanes, and I think it is a very sensitive subject.
Whatever technology was used, maybe they want to use that technology again, and maybe they want to keep it secret.
I often kind of say that, you can only keep a secret weapon secret up until you use it.
It's part of the psychological operations program. So this is not science fiction. Many people think it's science fiction.
Stephen E. Jones, the pioneer who created the truth movement, who covered up cold fusion in the 80s and then found thermite at the towers almost 30 years later, worked at Brigham Young University, a prominent Mormon college, and at that same university they are talking about this same technology, illusion technology, and comparing it to sci-fi films like Star Wars.
Popular mechanics are actually asking the question, does the Navy's missile falling plasma tech, is that explaining a lot of the recent UFO sightings, which I think is very relevant for the implications, touching on like a Project Bluebeam event. I'm almost of the opinion that this is why they've really tried to keep this a secret, this technology. Their magic trick it's not going to be as convincing. That was a really interesting timing of this, especially some of these releases of the Pentagon footage to do with some of these objects flying around. So that made me very skeptical of, was this part of this technology, what we touched on earlier?
Looking at how, false flag would most likely be used as the final step to establish the one world government, and that final step would be a false flag alien invasion.
Serge Monast was a French-Canadian researcher who first broke the Project Bluebeam story in the 90s, after which point his children were taken by the Canadian government and he later mysteriously died. Now, when I do a Google search for the name Serge Monast, the results yield an IT company called Bluebeam.
We're Bluebeam.
There's been like a bit of a seed change in the attitude towards ufology. It's been all of a sudden taking it seriously.
Whoa.
I've never seen anything like that.
What the actual... What is it?
When I look in the sky at night nowadays, I've got the knowledge that I didn't have before.
I don't know what that was.
That there's something out there and it's real. When this whole thing started, I tried to tell people about it. No one believed me. But now I do have evidence.
It was giant, quiet, and it was amazing.
And then, bam, the New York Times story. It changed everything.
This is it. This is when the government is going to reveal the truth.
Oh my God.
It was a bombshell, right? That's what it was.
Whether you accept it or not, some people actually saw this stuff. People are actually going to believe us now.
Imagine if it was acknowledged officially that UFOs exist.
Our own divisions would suddenly feel so much smaller. It was dark money. Even members of Congress don't know it's there.
This is too big to turn away from.
There's something in our skies, and we don't know what it is, but there's something coming. The world needs to get ready for what's about to happen. The world needs to get ready for what's about to happen.
This film is a follow-up sequel to a 3-hour documentary called 9/11 Alchemy: Facing Reality.
Released in 2018, it attempts to connect the dots between advanced technology and the events of September 11th. In this documentary, we will be exploring more of these connections as well as the occult and esoteric aspects of the cover-up and ritual.
The events of 9/11, 2001 was an example of chaos sorcery. It was an occultic ritual of human sacrifice.
Alchemy, the study and philosophy of how to change basic material into other material, and how this material is related to magic and astrology.
The alchemists of old tried to take actual physical matter and change it into gold. Those ideas philosophically translated into the occult tradition. So you're trying to turn yourself from base material to gold, right? So that's it. And actually, I mean, the whole idea of synthesis, antithesis, synthesis, that actually comes from magic, actually, believe it or not. It was used by Hegel.
The Hegelian dialectic.
Yeah, the dialectic actually comes from magic. So maybe that's something going on in 9/11.
Chaos sorcery. The Hegelian dialectic, or problem, reaction, solution. And we're going to see an example of how this is put into action when we analyze the 9/11 occult ritual.
Kevin Wolf, a nuclear physicist incidentally, got some even more astonishing results as early as 92, which were these transmutational results, the metal forming another metal inside. There's that dreadful word alchemy, which we mustn't use, but it was a form of that in a way, that it was creating new metals, you see.
Now you can call it magic, if you like, you can call it sorcery, you can call it alchemy, but I think it's all part of the same thing. It's a way of engineering or affecting the ether, this underlying fabric of our reality.
The background energy from which all reality becomes manifest. All matter, all energy, everything is condensed in some form from the ether.
Tesla, 100 years ago, knew about this. and knew that it could provide free energy to the world, but he also knew it could fall into the wrong hands and be used for evil purposes.
9/11 proves the existence of free energy technology on this planet.
What we saw on September 11th was a manipulation of the ether, the underlying fabric of our reality. That is a sea of energy. It is all-pervasive, homogeneous and isotropic, all directions at all times in abundance. This existence, this ether, could be used for good, but it has been weaponized and it was used that day.
The gatekeepers of official science continue to deprive us of a technology we so desperately need to be proper stewards of our world.
I soon discovered that it would be impossible to uncover this technology without first realizing that there is a forbidden knowledge. And only by diving into the occult and seeking out this hidden knowledge can one really find the truth. Studying numerology, the Kabbalah, synchronicity, Freemasonry, Rosicrucianism, and the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn.
Now, although each of these organizations and societies have a very similar fundamental value at their core, the ideologies are different. And although the goals are very much the same, the rhetoric, the symbolism, and most importantly, the interpretation can change depending on different areas of esoteric research.
Kabbalah, Tarot, and Freemasonry. And those three occult ideologies, the symbolism of which was employed on that day.
Synchromysticism, a portmanteau of synchronicity and mysticism. It is the art of realizing meaningful coincidences in the seemingly mundane with mystical or esoteric significance.
I often don't use the word synchromysticism anymore. I just call it sync.
Yeah.
I think synchromysticism is a great word, but for some people, if you say mysticism, they immediately think something sinister or maybe new agey or silly. So I often just say sync.
Welcome to the brave new world order. What I try and do at my blog is something I call synchromysticism. I describe it as the art of finding meaningful coincidence in the seemingly mundane with mystical or esoteric significance.
But yeah, I mean, those quotes you read, they still reflect my view on that. I feel like when you notice connections between things, it's because they're there. I don't even really believe in coincidence.
Is it merely the cosmic giggle and the interconnectedness of all things, misinterpreted as grandiose conspiracy theory? I would suggest the secret society higher-ups, being intimately involved with higher consciousness, move with the forces of coincidence and conspiracy in a seamless fashion.
These investigations into pop culture elements existing seemingly out of linear time brought with them a series of philosophical problems. Just as 9/11 conspiracies were ushering in a so-called truth movement, the hunt for, shall we say, a more ultimate truth began in earnest. In 2007, an obscure little 10-minute video on YouTube blended conspiracy with this high weirdness in a package that perfectly skimmed the edges of the reality that was bending around it. This video from Jake Katza, yet another focusing on 9/11, would be the first emergence of what would evolve into the Synchromysticism school and sync films as a genre. Although the genre wouldn't have its moment of recognition till 8 years later, when it again returned to the topic of 9/11 for Joe Alexander's headline-grabbing viral video, Back to the Future Predicts 9/11. Back to the Future isn't the only film that strangely foreshadows this historical flashpoint, as David Plate's nearly 8-hour video response, Everything Predicts 9/11, makes abundantly clear. However, there are some examples that are more striking than others. In particular, if you watch the 1983 Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy comedy Trading Places, you might notice a number of bizarre correlations to 9/11 the likes of which we've been discussing today. I was starting to make a list of all the 9/11 weirdness in trading places when I noticed a name in the credits that stood out to me. Aaron Russo. See, somewhere between releasing the documentary Freedom to Fascism and his death just 1 year later, a short clip of Aaron talking about 9/11 became a major talking point on all the conspiracy sites. I struggled to wrap my mind around this seemingly ridiculous, yet undeniably real possibility.
I think with 9/11, when I sort of started syncing with things from 9/11, that's when things really started exploding. Those were the syncs that I think most people remember, and the syncs that definitely got the most attention. I think just because that event is so huge in consciousness as well, that the synchronicities about it just really resonate with people.
People start having their own personal synchronicities when they find that information, because it absolutely happened to me.
The man, Henry Tillman, the mission.
Come up with the big idea.
I'm Henry Tillman, a little guy who can make a big splash.
A big enough way to tell New York Channel 11 is bigger and better than ever.
The message is clear.
Is more than one small country. It is a big idea.
Here is the news at 8:55, brought to you by... Here is the news at 8:55.
With the hands set to 9 and 11, 8:55 is the exact same time that Rockefeller Center lights its Christmas tree every year.
For Henry Tillman, the quest continues, searching for a dream, reaching for a star, looking for the big idea.
It is a big idea.
Channel 11's got blockbuster movies. Everyone's favorite comedy.
You see here the analog clock on set is resting at the time 11:11. And to further confirm synchronicity, we see it again in the next scene.
Traded in his quest for the big idea, Channel 11's Henry Tillman appeals to the people of New York.
The big idea may be right in front of your eyes.
It is a big idea. A new world order.
Even in sleep, Channel 11's Henry Tillman dreams of the big idea.
New York's got our number. New York loves our style.
11 on your dial.
In one of the commercials, I cut to a home movie that we shot. Henry's about 8 years old, and he's built a set of block trade towers, and they're standing behind him. And at some point, the towers collapse around him. So strange to go back and see it again.
It is a big idea. A new world order.
And today that new world is struggling to be born. A world quite different from the one we've known.
It is a big idea.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order, an order in which a credible United Nations can use its peacekeeping role to fulfill the promise and vision of the UN's founders.
You must help save Israel!
We must help save Israel! We must help save Israel! We must help save Israel!
It is a big idea.
We have, if you've been with us all day, been showing these pictures over and over again. They are dramatic, they are a story, they are what happened. And they are unlike anything we've ever seen before.
The 1993 film Super Mario Bros. Brings the twin towers of the World Trade Center into play. The partly destroyed towers, reminiscent of the 9/11 event, are seen in Mushroom Land after our heroes travel through a water door type Stargate. Ben Fairhall points out another wonderful box that opens up gates or doorways. We see it in the Hellraiser franchise. The Hellraiser free poster features the open Stargate puzzle box and the twin pillars of Boaz and Jachin. Ben Fairhall again illuminates that this film was released on September 11th, 1992. Are we now lost in a labyrinth of apathenia, or have we discovered a message embedded in the fabric of space-time? The replacement of the World Trade Center, the octagonal Freedom Tower, rests on a perfect cube. Does the completion of this building in 2012 represent the ending of the Stargate mega ritual started on 9/11?
I'm sure 9/11 was an initiation of the whole world and Americans in particular.
We talked about the Stargate reference. There's a lot of things like a portal, if you will.
I mean, in the beginning, the Stargate of 9/11 was like a secret society, occult mega ritual that they did to initiate the world. And I don't know, I had all these ideas, nothing like 100% concrete, but it seemed to me like, okay, just like the Masonic tracing board has the pillars and the pentagram, there's just sort of all these connections between these ritualistic orders and the 9/11 event. Meditating on that kind of like had the effect of actually initiating me, the person writing about that stuff. I feel like it's the people who were watching it, the videos that I was making, and myself, that were going through the Stargate.
The questions got even weirder once people started looking at images like this one. This is the cover to the Coup Party Music album. According to Wikipedia, this cover art was created in June 2001 and was originally scheduled for release in September of that year. Literally just days after 9/11, Wired magazine published this tidbit from the album's label manager. Quote, timing of the original album printing was disturbingly in sync with real-world events. The printers were set to crank out copies of the fiery World Trade Center image on Tuesday, Isabella said, when the label put in a last-minute call urging them to stop the presses. Even if it didn't have such obvious effects on the world at large, it did inspire a hunt for answers every bit as passionate, albeit on a much smaller scale.
So they can tell the world that we left the rest of them to fucking die? Come on! I hear you, brother! I hear you! And the world hears you! And very, very soon, my friend, whoever did this to us will hear from all of us!
And the speech he gives is identical to Bush's speech.
I can hear you, the rest of the world hears you, and the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon. In New Jersey and Connecticut, as we mourn the loss of thousands of our citizens. I can hear you. I can hear you. The rest of the world hears you. And the people who knocked these buildings down will hear all of us soon.
The Stargate reference, the Stargate.
We also spoke about this 2122 type of gateway.
And I saw 2001 as the gateway.
Quote, since the gateway year, 2001, the majority of Americans have been processed as initiates. They are Masons on site, i.e., members of the secret society without knowing it. Michael Hoffman, page 27 in his sequel of Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare, published 2021, entitled Twilight Language.
So the question is there a language that talks over our rationality, over our everyday language, and speaks to that mind? And I would say the entire impact of my work and the whole raison d'etre of what I'm doing is basically to try and impart that understanding to people.
What does an avowed occultist, the founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratory and NASA, a science fiction writer and founder of Scientology, an ex-Nazi turned America's foremost rocket scientist, and Walt Disney all have in common? Well, actually, you'd be quite surprised at the connections between the occult, magic, space technology, and science fiction.
Jack Parsons, a co-founder of Jet Propulsion Laboratories, an important player in NASA's early history, and hand-picked leader of the OTO in America by Aleister Crowley.
Jack's name will live forever.
In his private life, he got involved in what some might call a cult.
Strange shenanigans going on in Jack's commune.
Well, publicly, he was developing a lot of great technologies. Privately, he was hosting sex parties, and he was getting involved in this otherworldly stuff that many thought was not becoming of a scientist.
Part rebel, part occultist, and 100% rocket scientist.
Is there perhaps some kind of clandestine shadow NASA operating behind the scenes in an occult fashion?
You know, every time they would shoot a rocket off, Parsons would recite Crowley's Hymn to Pan, which is probably one of his famous or best-known poems. And then he did the Babylon Working with Hubbard out in the desert. So, yeah, he was doing kind of the same stuff that Crowley did, which was John Dee's magic, Enochian magic. They had this like magical tablet, and they were trying to get readings in this other language.
Right.
So Parsons was very important. Parsons was important as a change agent, at least bringing Crowley's ideas out.
Wouldn't you say space technology is born out of the occult?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's a good question. I mean, I think in some circumstances, yeah.
It begs the question if NASA and space technology and all this is really just born out of these magical occult workings.
Yeah, no. I mean, I think that there's a very strong possibility.
In the beginning, when you go down that road, you have to explain the human elements that would have been orchestrating this. You know, you get into the realm of like having to like associate it to like wizards or future computers, or it has to get like very otherworldly or strange. The synchronicities and the sort of awareness that these people must have in order to like do this makes them otherworldly or occult. Very strange occult.
You know, the name of my film is Alchemy because I found out about this transmutation and had never heard of it. And when I found out about that in the Philosopher's Stone, what all these Harry Potter movies are really about.
Harry Potter is an alchemist, and you want to talk about 11s. Harry Potter's name is an 11, a 5 and a 6. His wand is an 11.
It had been enough of a shock for Harry to discover on his 11th birthday that he was a wizard. As in Crowley's Satanism, in the Harry Potter series, the number 11 takes on special significance. Not only does Harry realize that he has occult powers at the age of 11, but the length of Harry's wand seems to have special significance. In Harry Potter, the Goblet of Fire, page 310, we read, quote, "This one, which was made of holly, 11 inches long." Both Crowley and Harry did not only get their starts as sorcerers at the same age and under similar circumstances, but they both had distinguishing marks as children that revealed that they were sorcerers.
So people are being exposed to that. They're being almost initiated through Harry Potter. And I think Harry Potter is a very important cultural phenomenon to understand that a lot of its themes and ideas and numerology overlaps with 9/11.
You can then make an argument that that's why this story of this, rags to riches housewife, there might be a bit more to it than that, in that, maybe these Harry Potter stories have another purpose for coming into existence. It wasn't just because she had a nice idea while she was sat in a cafe and down on her luck. There's a bit more to it than that.
I think that she might have had help from the outside, or she might have a ghost. She might just be a front for somebody else.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could never prove that, but she had an excellent understanding of the Western esoteric tradition. I know that she was a classics major in college, so she may have picked up stuff on the way, but she had the foundations on point right there when Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, which is a play on the Western esoteric idea of the Philosopher's Stone, right?
Right.
J.K. Rowling also seems to be patterning the life of Harry Potter after the life of Satanist Aleister Crowley. Blavatsky is an obvious reference to H.P. Blavatsky, as Blavatsky is a perfect anagram for Blavatsky, who shares the same initials as Harry Potter. Her name is usually written as H.P. Blavatsky. Blavatsky's book, Unfogging the Future, is listed as a divination text at the Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry in the Harry Potter series, and recalls Isis Unveiled, which is Blavatsky's first major work. Blavatsky is, of course, along with Satanist Aleister Crowley, a Gnostic founder of the modern-day New Age movement, or Neo-Gnosticism. Blavatsky, in her Secret Doctrine, quotes occultist Eliphaz Levi.
And Eliphaz Levi was an ex-Catholic priest, and he wrote this kind of famous picture of the goat of Mendes, or Baphomet, what they called. And he's making all these signs, Salve et Coagula, which is an alchemical axiom. And he's got the moon, the suns.
And you talk about it being a technology-influenced magic ritual in your film.
The September 11th event involved the use of ceremonial magic in the Western esoteric tradition, externalized in a made-for-Hollywood production for a Hollywoodized populace. The ornately structured day of September 11th, 2001 was akin to an operation of the highest technology-influenced ceremonial magic. Or as Arthur C. Clarke would say in his third law, quote, any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. And you can see the monolith here in the background. In Clarke's book, 2001, A Space Odyssey, the monolith is 11 feet tall, the number of magic. The monolith that's 11 feet tall signals the advent of a new aeon to begin in 2001. The United Nations building in New York City also has the same monolithic dimensions, as well as the Georgia Guidestones. The Millennium Hilton, located right next to the World Trade Center, is also a giant monolith, as seen here.
First appeared on New Year's Day, then disappeared, apparently stolen. Caleb Schreiber acting for a group called Some People.
You talked about the World Trade Center being knocked down. Some people. You remember the famous Some People?
There's a lot of people that have helped out. Some people, some other people, some parks people.
Some people with the World Trade Center. Some people? No, not some people. Much more than some people.
He wants to be known only as Honky the Clown, but he says his two friends originated the idea for the monolith about 2 months ago. This time, it's not going anywhere.
We are looking at panels from a 1985 Marvel comic called Revenge of the Living Monolith, in which a giant menacing blood relative of the ancient pharaohs attacks New York after making the trip from Egypt in a jet plane. Attempting to thwart the pharaoh's destructive advance, we find Spider-Man eager to be involved in this action. The cover sees the gigantic pharaoh stepping through the holiest of holies representing space and smashing in a single blow the south tower of the pyramids. These matters leave nothing to fear, as the shamanic elites of society have for aeons by necessity played this game, but it is time for the massive flowering of real consciousness on Earth.
Now there's a vast array of literature on the occult, and there's a wide range of literature on September 11th. But there are very key pieces of literature that one needs in order to bring these two topics together. One very important author is Michael Hoffman of Secret Societies and Psychological Warfare. This has been a very important piece to solving this puzzle.
The final edition was published in April of 2001. You can see from the cover of the book, it has the obelisk that was put up on New Year's Day 2001 in the Seattle, Washington area, related to 2001 A Space Odyssey by Kubrick, which goes back to Arthur C. Clarke's story, The Sentinel, about this mute obelisk and its influence over the number or the year 2001.
It was actually flush with the Twin Towers. This building, it's called the Millennium Hilton. It's actually intentionally designed to look like the 2001 monolith.
MES note, the Millennium Hilton Hotel has 2001 in their contact number even to this day as of 2024.
Flames are coming out the window. We've been told to stay in our hotel, and I'm watching this right in front of me. I wanted to call and tell you. I'm at the Millennium Hotel. My phone number here is 212-693-2001.
And this object, this black monolith in the film, opens the Stargate in 2001.
So for me, 2001 was going to be the gateway into an attempt of a greater suppression of humanity on the road to bestializing us and to taking us from human beings in a process of reversing evolution, a process of devolution, from human beings into people who are more or less, their lives are demarcated by machine intelligence and so-called virtual reality.
20 years now after September 11th, and he is one of the only people I know besides myself who referred to September 11th as a form of human alchemy. And it has the monolith from 2001.
Liber 175 in the Crowley system was used to invoke any deity by adoration. There are three main methods of invoking any deity. The first method consists of devotion to that deity, and being mainly mystical in character, they not be dealt with in this place, especially as a perfect construction exists in Liber 175. The second method is the straightforward ceremonial invocation. The third method is the dramatic, perhaps the most attractive of all. Certainly it is so to the artist's temperament, for it appeals to his imagination through his aesthetic sense.
In short, 11 is about division. It's about separation, at least from biblically 11. It's funny because certain New Agey people define these numbers ironically exactly the opposite of the way the Bible defines it.
In relation to duality, the two pillars are representative of two polarizing aspects or forces that, when mastered, result in mental transmutation known as sacred alchemy or divine magic. The one card in tarot is the magician. He is the powerful manipulator of energy. He is an alchemist in touch with higher knowledge and all of the elements.
Crowley explains the importance of the number 11 in magic and theory and practice. Firstly, 11 is the number of magic in itself. It is therefore suitable to all types of operation. Secondly, it is the sacred number par excellence of the new aeon, as it is written in the book of the law, 11 as all of their number who are of us.
1111 can also be looked at numerologically, which is the esoteric mathematical science that states each number has its own unique vibration and meaning. The master number 11, when doubled, becomes 1111 or 22.
The importance of the number 22 isn't just a peculiarity invented by an obscure sage or theologian. Rather, it's a common figure that comes up again and again from multiple sources, as if it's vitally important to the very fabric of our existence. Bullinger explains how the meanings behind the number 22 are derived largely from similar symbolism dealing with the number 11. That number stands for disorder, disorganization, imperfection, and disintegration. So, as a general rule of thumb, number 22 represents a doubling of the symbolism of 11. It often serves as a marker used by forces which are opposed to God, his efforts, and those of his allies. But as we shall see, its connection to our reality may run even deeper than that. And clearly there are some very powerful people, one might even say evil people, who want us to know all about this quantity and what it stands for. Second only to 9/11, there can be probably no greater American tragedy or American conspiracy than JFK being assassinated on 11/22/63. The US dollar, the world's reserve currency, aka the petrodollar, is essentially backed by Arab oil instead of gold. This in turn leads us directly to elite American and European power families who undoubtedly control much of the world's governments, economies, and even wars from behind the scenes. Nowadays, this ancient cabal is often called the deep state, and you can bet your $15 movie ticket that they have a major say in everything you see on TV, in the movies, and on the news.
You published a video called 22s in Movies. Do you want to speak a little bit about that?
The 22s in movies, in popular culture for that matter, was kind of just a side note. At that point, towards the end of the book, I had already established the importance of various numbers, specifically 11s and 22s. And then when I started picking these up in a lot of movies, I started just kind of for fun writing them down. Then I'm getting up to 50, and I'm getting up to 100, and I'm getting up to 200 of them, and it's becoming really, this isn't just a coincidence, and this just isn't a case of weird pattern recognition. This is something I think important. It seems to fit with the pattern, not just as a coincidence, but something probably diabolical.
All magical paradigms partake in some form of action at a distance, be it distance in space or time, or both. In magic, this is called synchronicity. A mental event, perception, or an act of will occurs at the same time as an event in the material world. Of course, this can always be excused as coincidence, but most magicians would be quite content with being able to arrange coincidences.
Don't talk, just listen. Each of the 22 hostages has been wrapped with 20 pounds of C4 explosives.
My friend Rocket here has escaped 22 prisons.
Oh, I've escaped 22 prisons.
What's the moment look through it?
Our surveillance was ahead 22 minutes outside of Prague.
Should evacuate the city, sir.
22 minutes to evacuate 1.5 million people. I'm going straight through. Use the rocket launcher. Hit it!
Where's your mom?
That's on 22, actually. I'm on 22, can you hear me, okay?
The whole building is a huge superconductive antenna that was designed and built expressly for the purpose of pulling in and concentrating spiritual turbulence. Your girlfriend lives in the corner penthouse of Spook Central.
Are you key masked?
22. That's it?
Synchromysticism has been described as a phenomenon existing on the fringe of areas already considered fringe. It is also very apparent in what is considered chaos magic. Chaos magic is a contemporary magical practice consisting of techniques most frequently entering into an altered state of consciousness and manipulating symbols to attain objective results in physical reality. From the beginning, the founders of chaos magic were explicit in stating that these results take the form of synchronicities.
In 2004, I published a book called The Real 911. That book had to do with numerical phenomenon as revealed in a theological context. I had been studying this field for several decades, but after 9/11, I really started to look into the occult signature of American events and architecture with a new, invigorated focus. In the closing chapters of that book, I listed perhaps 40 or so examples of significant occurrences of 22s in movies. Sensitized as I was by similar symbolic occurrences elsewhere, I thought they were strange, but left the whole thing as sort of a curiosity more than a pivotal piece of the war of numbers. I figured my readers would have to decide for themselves how important these insertions were. Well, it's now been more than 15 years since that book was published, and even though the public's outrage and education about the reality of 9/11 has waned, the 22s have not stopped coming. During that time, I've seen a lot of movies and logged a lot more 22s as well. I may have as many as 200 written down on napkins and envelopes and scrap paper everywhere. This was all just kind of a hobby with no actual goal. Then in 2018, I saw the latest installment of the Avengers saga and was virtually prodded into taking up this mantle once again. With billions of dollars in profits and perhaps as many fans, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or MCU for short, has become the largest movie franchise on Earth. If someone was purposely putting a numerical message or signature of some kind into movies, it was a sure bet they would be in the MCU.
Indeed, there is an abundance of programming in the Marvel cinematic films. Now, before we dive into the numerical patterns, I'd like to discuss how the film's propaganda ties into the technology used on September 11th. Now, this is something we've seen before in the X-Men Apocalypse film when they wake up the Egyptian deity who becomes the villain and uses his godlike powers to turn everything into dust.
False gods. Idols.
And you can also see the Twin Towers along with loads of symbolism in the opening credits of this X-Men Apocalypse film. The difference between the villain turning everything to dust in the Avengers film is Thanos, or Kronos representation, snaps his fingers with the Infinity Stones and is able to turn people into dust.
Steve?
The Twin Towers were also filled with people. Inexplicably, though, almost half of the victims' bodies seem to have disappeared into thin air. When a building collapses, the victims tend to remain trapped between the pancaking floors. They may be crushed and mangled, but in most cases they remain in one piece. In fact, on the morning of September 11, local hospitals prepared to receive hundreds of victims they expected to be extracted from the rubble. Practically no one arrived. According to the chief medical examiner, 2,749 victims died in the Twin Towers, but fewer than 300 whole bodies were recovered. Nearly 20,000 pieces of bodies were found in the ruins, more than 6,000 small enough to fit in 5-inch test tubes. 200 different pieces were matched to a single person. 1,630 victims were eventually identified, 800 of which by DNA alone. This means that for 800 victims, there were no body parts large enough to be recognizable. The remaining 1,119 victims were never identified. This means that for more than 40% of the victims, not even a fragment large enough to recover DNA was found.
Let's have a look at how that film started. That's right, the movie hasn't actually even started yet. No images, no credits, and yet someone felt it was important enough to work in a 22 onto a completely black screen, no less. What's really interesting about this is that if you look around just a little bit, you can find an alternate intro without this superfluous detail. It's almost as if they were a bit worried that it was a little bit too blatant. I realized that Infinity War and the MCU as a whole was potentially the biggest opportunity for propaganda ever made. In April 2019, when Endgame came out, it was the fastest movie to ever reach $1 billion. And yes, if you haven't been keeping track, that would be the 22nd film in the whole MCU saga.
Today's day 21? No, 22. chaos sorcery.
Essentially, chaos magic consists of a set of techniques for deliberately engineering synchronicities. As Carroll makes clear in his later text, magical results consist of meaningful coincidences, or a series of events going somewhat improbably in the desired direction.
Here's the Statue of Liberty and the World Trade Center, both of which are riddled with occult symbolism, and the 22-hour countdown timer from the movie, all in one nice, neat place. The mission gets underway as our hero, Snake Plissken, does a daredevil landing on top of the 110-story World Trade Center. As the movie poster implies, at the beginning of the story, Snake is given just over 22 hours to complete his mission. But here, just after landing on the World Trade Center, he checks his timer again and finds he has 19 hours and 22 minutes left. After a lot of Hollywood badassery, Snake finds the president being held in a train car. It's number 2205, and we get lots of good chances to see that number. But let's back up just a minute to the beginning of Snake's mission when he is fitted with the countdown timer. Now, this is so incredibly bizarre, you're just going to have to try it on your own devices to be sure. But I'm pretty sure you're all going to be within a couple seconds of finding the same thing. Look close at the screen capture, and then at the following video. I started and stopped it a couple times to keep the counter visible. Yes, believe it or not, and don't ask me how this is possible, but Snake is actually given the 22-hour countdown timer at exactly 22 minutes into the movie.
22 hours, 59 minutes, 57 seconds. We talked about 24. In 22 hours, the Hartford Summit meeting will be over.
Like the man said, don't ask me, I just work here.
An innocent, mundane movie poster, or perhaps a veiled message? Look at the negative space. Is there something hidden here? Now we can see 3 pillars with more light behind the middle pillar. Can we see this motif in other places? This image is the first-degree Masonic tracing board. Notice the light emanating from the eye above the middle pillar. Compare this design to the World Trade Center poster. Here we see the 3 pillars again. In Da Vinci's The Last Supper, here they're like windows with the light, Jesus, right in the middle pillar. Golden Dawn member Israel Regardie, a famous occultist and secretary of Aleister Crowley, he knew about the middle pillar.
According to Waite, Regardie, Mathers, Crowley, and the others in the Golden Dawn group, this slippage of the middle pillar results in an 11th non-Sephiroth opening on the middle pillar between Kether and Tiferet they named Death, meaning knowledge, after Gnosis, meaning the quest to know.
Can we find all the themes discussed thus far? Higher consciousness expressed by the middle pillar, 9/11, and pyramids, all connected together in a synchromistic fashion. In the 1982 film by John Carpenter, Escape from New York, we see the president's plane flying towards the New York skyline. We also see Kurt Russell as Snake Plissken landing his glider on the roof of the World Trade Center. So we see Snake on a plane flying towards the World Trade Center. We saw the snakes and the plane combined again in 2006 in Snakes on a Plane. Notice how the coiling snakes around the plane form a caduceus, Hermes' staff.
Crowley began studying the occult as a member of the Golden Dawn.
The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn was the secret society par excellence of the Victorian age in England. It brought together, again, the knowledge that was available at that point in time. So you had tarot, and you had Kabbalah, and you had John Dee's angelic magic and Rosicrucian traditions, all being melded together under a single system.
The Golden Dawn attracted many of the London intelligentsia.
How does Hermes come into play there?
The ancient gods are symbols for them, and they symbolize certain precepts. So Hermes was a messenger, I think.
The staff of Hermes, like the radiating middle pillar in the Tree of Life or the Kabbalah tree. are symbols of higher consciousness. In the movie Stargate, we see Kurt Russell, who now resonates synchromistically with Snake Plissken from Escape from New York, going through the Stargate. Notice, he is the first person to go through the Stargate. And where does this character show up, who now resonates with both a person who flies towards the World Trade Center and goes through a Stargate? Why, he ends up right between two pillars and an Egyptian-style pyramid. That's where.
The number 93 is the number associated with Thelema.
Crowley called his new system Thelema. It incorporated principles of magic that he said he had learned from ancient Egyptian and other occult sources.
If there were Thelemites who saw the event in Flight 93 and saw it as a calling almost, what do you think?
100%. It's a signature, yeah. They saw the 11 and 93, and they just knew exactly what was going on.
The number 93. The number directly refers in the Kabbalah to the word of the law, Thelema, will, and agape, love. 93 is the value of theta, epsilon, lambda, eta, mu, alpha, or Thelema, the word of the law proclaimed by Aiwass, and of alpha, gamma, alpha, pi, eta, or agape, love, part of the interpretation of theta, epsilon, lambda, eta, mu, alpha. It was also that of the lost word of Freemasonry, which I had rediscovered, thus linking up the mysteries of the OTO with those of the AA. 93 is also the number of the secret word of the neophyte of AA, a word indicating symbolically the whole course of existence. That Aiwass should have, so to speak, signed himself with his law was irrefutable proof of his existence. You can see from this letter that Crowley wrote to one of his followers, Kenneth Grant, that he shorthanded love under law, love under will, with 93, 93, 93 above where he wrote 666.
This is the film United 93, based on the events of 9/11. A would-be hijacker is making his fake bomb in the washroom of Flight 93.
You come out the Jersey Turnpike, and I'll tell you, New York was like Emerald City. Yeah, it was beautiful.
We just saw a passenger in United 93 explaining to another how beautiful New York was and comparing it to the Emerald City in The Wizard of Oz. In 1904, Crowley would receive the Book of the Law soon after meditating in the King's Chamber of the Great Pyramid. He claimed he had been contacted by a being called Aiwass. Crowley would also use this symbol in his work. Some of its meanings are said to include a reference to the number 77 in Hebrew and a connection to the god Pan. Crowley made this drawing of a non-human intelligence he saw during a ritual. Synchronist 23 has made the connection between Aiwass and the Wizard of Oz, and has further pointed out the similarities between Crowley's grey alien-like drawing and the depiction of the projection of the Wizard of Oz in the film version.
I have to give the matter a little thought. The Wizard of Oz. As we've already seen, 77 is an important number in Crowley's magical system, and you can see George Bush Sr. here wearing a cap with a 77 on it and some type of goat and star motif. The aircraft carrier, named after George H.W. Bush, is also numbered 77. Here's a picture of Bush looking up at the number 77. The aircraft carrier was completed with much fanfare in 2009. It was the last and final supercarrier of the United States Navy.
The much overlooked theory has been put forward on the internet that when we are looking at George W. Bush, we are actually seeing Aleister Crowley's grandson.
There's a decent chance that Barbara Bush is the illegitimate offspring of Crowley. I don't know if anybody could ever prove that, but the similarities of the way she looks and the timing of her birth, where Crowley was, where her mom was, her name was Pauline Robinson in France, it all kind of syncs up in a very strange way, but would create a continuum from the 30s all the way up to 2001.
And there's that whole story of the pet goat, you know, whether this is some tie up to these, these occult ceremonies and things like this. So, you know, it really makes you wonder.
I have suggested that this video footage of George W. Bush reading The Pet Goat, coinciding with the start of the 9/11 mega ritual, is in fact a dedication of the 9/11 mega ritual to the great god Pan by Aleister Crowley's grandson.
It was a whiz. Do you remember that? It had Michael Jackson in it. Do you know where they finish off doing their last scene in the Emerald City?
Yeah, but go ahead and tell me it's the World Trade Center.
Yeah, it's the World Trade Center. So it's right there at the very center. They have the ball, the spherical caryatid, which is a term of a temple.
Let's have a quick look at Earth's Consensus Library entry about this piece and see what we can learn. We see that König made this thing in Bavaria, the same place where the Illuminati was founded. The most interesting fact about the placement of the sphere at the World Trade Center Plaza has to be that architect and designer of the World Trade Center, Minoru Yamasaki, intended the plaza itself to be a representation of the Grand Mosque of Mecca, the sphere in particular taking the place of the Kaaba. This is why I believe the sphere was set to rotate every 24 hours at the World Trade Center Plaza. It was mimicking the processional rituals at the Kaaba and at the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah, it's the World Trade Center, so it's right there at the very center.
Yeah, there's pyramids, and they're almost dancing around that sphere in a ritualistic fashion. And I think they go through some sort of portal or gate after crossing the bridge to get to the Emerald City, which is the World Trade Center.
Do you think the Wizard of Oz stories and films were influenced then by Crowley?
Maybe, but that guy, what was his name? Berg? I forgot what the writer's name was. He was very much a Blavatsky follower, right? So he was into her religion. So I think he integrated a lot of stuff from that.
On arriving at the end of the Yellow Brick Road, Dorothy and her companions go through the circular portal. Through the door, we see 3 pyramids. Behind the pyramid shape, in between the pyramid pillars of the World Trade Center, we see the sphere. The representation of the Kaaba, which we have connected to the Ben and the Holiest of Holies in Solomon's Temple and the King's Chamber. The inhabitants of Oz dance around the sphere in ritualistic fashion. Fashioned in giant letters over the dome of the sphere, we see the word Oz. Oz, symbols of Pan and Aiwass, seen smack at the heart, where the new Aeon was ushered in, and where the Stargate was opened.
And that ball features into Fight Club and all these other things. So it's featured in Fight Club, which came out in 1999.
We were supposed to kill 2 birds with 1 stone.
In Fight Club, Project Mayhem destroys a giant bronze spherical sculpture. This seems an obvious reference to the sphere at the World Trade Center complex.
Trust me. Everything's gonna be fine.
In a pivotal scene reminiscent of 9/11, we see the destruction of skyscrapers and the change of a skyline.
Another sign of this technology being exposed through propaganda and films is the Spider-Man movie. The villain in this film uses drones that display holographic images to deceive people. Sound familiar? Previous film, I presented evidence of directed energy weapons at both the Pentagon as well as the Shanksville Flight 93 crash site.
There's actually no doubt in my mind that there's energy effects at Shanksville.
This evidence parallels perfectly with the evidence compiled by Dr. Judy Wood in her 500-page investigation of the World Trade Center entitled Where Did the Towers Go?, where she clearly shows evidence of directed free energy technology being responsible for destroying both of the towers in New York City on September 11th, 2001.
We spoke about the electrical disturbances, didn't we, in New York in the film. And we do have similar circumstances at the Pentagon with this electrical disturbances. What the seismologists determined was an electrical disturbance. So the fluctuation in that seismic data and the readings was from electrical disturbance. The person's watch stopped, which happened at the towers as well. The watches just stopped. We have clocks stopping at certain times where there's some type of electromagnetic interruption or disturbance happening. And I think there's evidence in that seismic data at the Pentagon.
Or field interference.
Yeah, field interference. We have rusting on the guardrails now. These guardrails are stainless steel, and there's in a number of places that there's elements where it's rusted up, it's breaking down, and in one section they've actually taken away the guardrail altogether. It rusted up that bad, and that's over by the planes path actually, the official plane path. They took that piece out. Now, further up the Pentagon, where the unofficial flight path was, you've also got rusting. And on both sides of the highway, freeway. And that is quite consistent, where they've had to put a number of trees in place. And I've tracked some of the rusting from 2007 or 8, right the way through, and it's still breaking down. The other area is just to mention is we got these toasted trucks, fire truck. When the plane struck, this fire truck was unable to start. Something affected its battery. That fire truck has familiar circular holes in some of the in one of the windows. It also has a rusted back wheels, rusted up, and also it's wilted at the back. Wow. Also with the clocks stopping and wristwatches, this takes me back to batteries and the galvanised steel of the guardrails. They have something in them called zinc, but I think there was something interfering with the zinc levels in those guardrails which caused some type of transmutation, and I think they also affected the alkaline. If there was alkaline batteries, they could have affected those as well, because they have zinc. Batteries are related with zinc as well.
So it sounds like more evidence of the Hutchison effect, energy phenomenon, and because of the zinc in the galvanized steel and because of the zinc in the batteries, we had the clock stopping and the rusting.
Yeah, it's indicative of a directed energy weapon. It's transmutation. We got the iron microspheres, which were in the dust at the World Trade Center. Again, there isn't a connection to the crop circles, again, some type of energy effect.
I'm sure many of you noticed how Elon Musk and space technology in general was declared an essential business during the pandemic. But did you know that Elon Musk's so-called Starlink company was actually created in 1996? While doing some digging on the archive, I found this jewel in the Wayback Machine. Internet beamed from space in 1996. They didn't even bother to change the name.
MES Correction. In 1996, Starlink.com was an internet provider company in Phoenix, Arizona. And in 2006, it was a database of links to celebrities or stars. It wasn't until 2019 that Starlink.com became what it is today.
Isn't it funny how the schematic for Starlink looks eerily similar to Nikola Tesla's space-based weapon system? More evidence that this pioneer is nothing more than a frontman.
Banning into space, a layered defense to protect the country from nuclear devastation. U.S. spy satellites would watch the world below, detect Soviet missiles blasting off, compute the position and speed of each missile, alert battle stations in space, on Earth. The first response. Space-based kinetic energy weapons fire high-speed projectiles from hypervelocity guns, intercepting enemy missiles as they are boosted through the atmosphere. Popped up into space, Earth-based nuclear-powered X-ray lasers fire their radioactive rays. Attack rays from land-based excimer lasers are redirected by huge mirrors orbiting in space. Chemical lasers fire beams that burn through the shell of the onrushing missile. Particle beam weapons with pulsing rays join the attack. Still over the atmosphere, the missile bus ejects its cargo, multiple nuclear warheads. As the remaining Soviet missiles now arc towards the U.S., ground-based projectiles are volleyed into space. Their giant steel ribs shatter the enemy weapons. The final minute. The surviving warheads enter the atmosphere above the United States, are attacked by laser-equipped planes. Earth-based lasers and ABM rockets eliminate the last warheads.
The administration's original claim for the Strategic Defense Initiative.
Quasi-crystals.
Many researchers and ufologists have studied, or at least heard, of the 1947 Roswell crash. There is an enormous amount of evidence to support the fact that some type of mysterious metal was recovered and transported to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Not too long thereafter, when he was done with his required military service in Israel, Daniel Shechtman went to work for Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. After spending years there working on crystallography, he then went on his sabbatical to work for NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology. While working at NIST, Daniel Shechtman discovered quasi-crystals, which went against the paradigm and made him become an outcast. He was fired and lost his job, totally lost employment, and was ridiculed by the media and his fellow work colleagues for years. Later, we hear about a man named Edgar Fouche, a former employee of Area 51. At the 1998 International UFO Conference, he gives a speech outlining some of the work he did and some of the classified technology located at Area 51. One of the things especially interesting when it comes to Edgar Fouche, for me, how these quasi-crystals could not only be used for many different applications, but one in particular was illusion technology. I of course found this very interesting since the man who discovered these quasi-crystals worked for NIST, the government corporation responsible for hiring the contractors who investigated the events of September 11th. I would say Edgar Fouche was telling the truth, and I would say that the only reason Daniel Shechtman was able to discover these quasi-crystals was because he worked at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where he was probably exposed to this technology many years prior. I would say that there are many more applications for quasi-crystals that are classified, and it goes well beyond non-stick frying pans.
And then I saw a presentation which was done in 2012 by somebody at Imperial College, and they were talking about quasi-crystals and how you could set them up in a material and you could make this material have a negative refractive index, which he essentially showed that this could be used to project an image from a surface, you know, for stealth.
While doing this type of research, it becomes extremely difficult, as many of these technologies are in the classified realm. You are able to find little glimpses of truth here and there, and little pieces of information that help boost you towards what the evidence is trying to show you. For instance, while digging into this area, I found this article, which was published in 2001, entitled "Holograms Based on Spooky Action at a Distance." Of the quantum entanglement phenomenon that Einstein described as spooky action at a distance, quantum holography may be the spookiest to date. Researchers at Boston University Quantum Imaging Laboratory proposed to create holographic images of objects concealed in a spherical chamber. According to the scheme, the inside of the chamber would be designed to detect the time when a photon hits the wall, but not where it hits. Classically, there is no way to generate an image of an object with this sort of configuration. Quantum mechanically, however, it is possible to build a hologram of the hidden object, provided that the photons in the illuminating beam are entangled with photons in another beam. Each photon in an entangled pair has properties, such as momentum or polarization, that are unknown until a measurement is performed on one photon or the other. When a property of one of the photons is measured, corresponding information about its entangled mate is instantly determined. That may seem spooky enough, but in quantum holography, things get spookier still. Holograms are typically constructed with interfering beams of light, which provides more information about a subject than simple illumination can. The additional information helps build a three-dimensional image of a three-dimensional object. For the moment, quantum holography exists only on paper, but the BU researchers assert that there are no technological obstacles to the proposal, and they hope to begin building an experimental system soon. This was published November 26, 2001. Considered fringe 20 years later, with all the talk of holographic universe and quantum entanglement, this spooky action at a distance.
He became a self-proclaimed master of action at a distance, focusing the power of his intention or will to create desired effects.
Aleister Crowley defined magic as the art and science of causing change to occur in conformity with the will. And his whole approach is basically to empower the practitioner to make their intentions happen, to materialize what they want to have happen in the world.
He began spontaneously writing a book he called the Book of the Law.
This book announces a new law for mankind.
A world quite different from the one we've known. A world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle.
The Book of the Law was another synthesis of Eastern and Western spirituality.
A world where the rule of law, not the law of the jungle, governs the conduct of nations.
The law of the jungle. Right. So did you think this was the Book of the Law?
I'm not totally sure, but he did say something very occult, which is the bridge, crossing the bridge or the Pontex map. It's very, and you'll see crossing the Rainbow Bridge in the occult. So that was a very heavy duty, very deep occult Masonic reference.
When we are successful, and we will be, we have a real chance at this new world order.
Not only is the numerology of Aleister Crowley woven into the 9/11 event, but the ideology of Crowley was implemented in the aftermath of September 11th, 2001. The idea that the slave shall serve with the quiet wisdom of cattle in the New World Order, with an occult-minded aristocratic elite bereft of ordinary moral principle or standards of right, to rule over the brainwashed masses.
Rule by a cryptocracy, rule by the secrets keepers, part of a corrupt mass of men who use secret signs and symbolism to tell the arresting cop when they were pulled over for speeding that they were on the level.
It is a big idea.
So what is the big idea? In light of all the evidence of Aleister Crowley's influence over the September 11th events, maybe we should look into his commentary. Now, these confessions from Aleister Crowley were so difficult for me to find, and some of this was authored by Kenneth Grant and John Simmons, and there is also some things that come from Aleister Crowley's personal commentary. Quote, "By the people is meant the canting, whining, servile breed of whipped dogs which refuses to admit its deity. The mob is always afraid for its bread and butter, and when its tyrants let it have any butter, and now and then the bread has 60% substitutes of cattle fodder. So, being afraid, it dare not strike. And when the trouble begins, we aristocrats of freedom, from the castle or the cottage, the tower or the tenement, shall have the slave mob against us. The newspapers will point out to us that the people prefer to starve and thank John D. Rockefeller for the permission to do so. Still deeper,
There is a meaning in this verse applicable to the process of personal initiation. By the people, we may understand the many-headed and mutable mob which swarms in the slums of our own minds. Most men are almost entirely at the mercy of a mass of loud and violent emotions without discipline or even organization. They sway with the mood of the moment. They lack purpose, foresight, and intelligence. They are moved by ignorant and irrational instincts, many of which affront the law of self-preservation itself with suicidal stupidity. The moral idea which we call the people is the natural enemy of good government. He who is chosen by Hadith to kingship must consequently be against the people if he is to pursue any consistent policy. The masked maggots of love devoured Mark Antony as they did Abelard. For this reason, the first task of the aspirant is to disarm all his thoughts, to make him impregnably above the influence of any one of them. Secondly, he must impose absolute silence upon them. He is then ready to analyze them, to organize them, to drill them, and so to take advantage of the properties peculiar to each one by employing its energies in the service of his imperial purpose. Men should not be taught to read and write unless they exhibit capacity or inclination. Compulsory education has aided nobody. It has imposed an unwarrantable constraint on the people it was intended to benefit. Presumption on the part of the intellectuals to consider a smattering of mental acquirements of universal benefit. It is a form of sectarian bigotry. We should recognize the fact that the vast majority of human beings have no ambition in life beyond mere ease and animal happiness. We should allow these people to fulfill their destinies without interference. We should give every opportunity to the ambitious and thereby establish a class of morally and intellectually superior men and women. We should have no compunction in utilizing the natural qualities of the bulk of mankind. We do not insist on trying to train sheep to hunt foxes or lecture on history. We look after their physical well-being and enjoy their wool and mutton. In this way, we shall have a contented class of slaves who will accept the conditions of existence as they really are and enjoy the life with the quiet wisdom of the cattle.
What's the big idea?
It is a big idea.